There is nothing more tantalising to the human species than a good mystery. Thrillers in the forms of novels, movies, and even campfire tales are often consumed by the thousands who love the adrenaline rush of solving a mystery. However, some of the most pervasive mysteries are those that occur in real life, and these are the ones that are often most difficult to solve. So today, here at Unexplained Mysteries, we'll be taking a look at mysterious discoveries. Azo Bassou, the Ape Man of Morocco. The man who became known to many as Azo Bassou, or the Ape Man of Dadis, quickly became a tabloid sensation. Azo has since become one of the best-known Ape Man cases in recent history, appearing in travel and adventure magazines. Some tabloids even named him the missing link between the Neanderthals and modern humans. He was found to be living in the valley of Dadis, near the town of Skora in Morocco during the 1930s. Azo has since become surrounded by speculation. Though it's widely thought he suffered from a type of microcephaly, his origins have become a story of legend. One of the most common is that Azo was an ape-human hybrid. It was first thought that a human had mated with a species of ape, which then resulted in the creation of Azo. His characteristics resembled that of an ape and not of a human, with a clear mental deformity. He lived in a cave, fed on dates, berries, and other dead animals, and used primitive tools while communicating via grunts, rather than any known human language. His forehead was sunken, and his arms were long, almost down to his knees. In 1956, the French writer Jean Boulet, alongside ethnologist Marcel Gomez, went to study the case of the Moroccan ape man. While they studied him, Azo unfortunately died at 60 years of age, but his alleged sisters, Hissa and Hakaya, lived on. Scientists concluded that the three siblings suffered from a case of microcephaly, but their cases are still widely speculated. Mystery ancestor mated with ancient humans. The desire of Homo sapiens to mate with their archaic relatives has long preoccupied researchers. Now scientists have discovered evidence of a previously unknown human species in the genome of West Africans. Modern man, Homo sapiens, mated with Neanderthals in Europe and fathered children. This is well known. Now, a study in the journal Science Advances shows that fertile exchanges also took place in Africa between Homo sapiens and an archaic human species. Fossilized bones do not exist of this apparently irresistible human relative. Instead, geneticists of the University of California discovered traces of the previously unknown prehistoric human in the genomes of present-day West Africans. The researchers refer to this as a ghost population. The discovery provides new clues to the genetic diversity of the genus Homo in Africa, which could previously only be reconstructed in fragments from fossils. The geneticists discovered the clues to the new human species during a genetic analysis. They compared the DNA of West Africans with that of Neanderthals and so-called Denisovan humans, another species closely related to Neanderthals. Genetic traces of both prehistoric humans are found in the genome of every modern human. In the genome of some West Africans, however, scientists have now discovered additional previously unknown genetic snippets that they have assigned to the new unknown relative. The modelling of the geneticists shows that the ways of the modern human being and the spirit relative initially separated about 1 million years ago in Africa. About 50,000 years ago, however, the two unequal partners met again. Researchers are still puzzling over whether the genetic traces point to a known archaic human species or actually belong to a new species. 1 million years ago, Homo erectus lived in Africa, presumably the first human species that used fire and could walk like a modern human. Did the ghost species resemble that prehistoric fellow? In the late 1960s, archaeologists in Nigeria found the so-called Iwo Eleru skull and dated it to be about 11,200 years old. The geneticists suspect that this human skull could have belonged to a representative of their spirit species. The mysterious ropen. Scientists and researchers have long acknowledged that we have not discovered and named nearly all of the plant and animal species that lie hidden throughout the planet, and one of the places considered most rife with undiscovered creatures and plants is the deep jungles of Papua New Guinea. One of the most legendary of these potentially hidden species is the ropen, which is a winged reptile resembling a gigantic bat that is considered to be very closely descended from the ancient pterodactyl. One of the most distinctive characteristics of the cryptid ropen, which means demon flyer, is its bioluminescent body that supposedly helps to attract and catch fish as it hunts during the night. Natives of Papua New Guinea have much folklore revolving around the ropen, which takes the role of both man and spirit in legends, but creationists have also fanatically searched for the beast as evidence that the Earth is not as old as scientists believe, leaving some to claim that the rumours of its existence were fabricated entirely by creationists. However, the first sighting of the ropen was recorded by well-respected and renowned entomologist Evelyn Cheeseman in 1935, decades before the creationists took up the cause. There are still others who claim that the reported sightings of the ropen are, in fact, merely a misidentified pterosaur, despite that species being known to be extinct. Other realists attribute the sightings to giant bats that are known to inhabit the area and have wingspans of up to 2 meters. However, the bioluminescence of the ropen is perhaps the strongest evidence of its existence, as most of the reported sightings have been of glimpses of flashes of glowing light as the ropen darted and fished during the night. No other creature known to the area can be attributed to these flashes in the night sky, which strengthens the argument for the existence of the cryptid, but the fact that flashes are all that have been glimpsed, and its body and general form and appearance is largely unknown, leads the rational to believe that the flashes could even be a freak of nature similar to the Northern Lights, rather than a creature at all. In 2006, an American creationist set out to prove the existence of the ropen once and for all, and provide support for the creationist theory of a much younger Earth. But after 2 nights of vigilance was only able to capture footage of their glowing aura and was forced to leave just as unsatisfied as when he arrived. Perhaps we will never discover whether a prehistoric, bat-like creature roams the night skies of Papua New Guinea, and maybe that is just how the ropen likes it. Be it mythical cryptid whose rumoured presence has led multiple expeditions on fruitless searches to attempt to find concrete proof of its existence, or 8 miles worth of highly detailed, unbelievable Ice Age cliff paintings that have lain undiscovered in plain sight for thousands of years, there is no doubt that the Amazon rainforest conceals many secrets. We will likely never be able to say that we truly understand all of the mysteries that lie hidden within the vines. And all that there is to do is continue the search as we attempt to uncover the secrets of the Amazon. Greyfriars Kirkyard and the Mackenzie poltergeist. Contrary to Halloween blockbusters and TV specials, graveyards are considered to be the best place to spot paranormal activity. Cemeteries are often peaceful grounds and a final resting place for the dead. But what happens when that final resting place is disturbed? Situated in the middle of Edinburgh's Old Town, Greyfriars Kirkyard is a cemetery that is steeped in history. It was first used as a burial ground back in 1562, and is now home to a host of notable figures from Scotland's past, including William McGonagall. Potterheads may recognise the name as the inspiration behind J.K. Rowling's Professor McGonagall, and many other tombstones in the cemetery can be linked to characters in the Harry Potter series. Another notable figure buried just outside the kirkyard is Bobby, a loyal dog who spent 14 years protecting the grave of his owner, John Grey. Unfortunately, dogs are not permitted to be buried within the kirkyard, as it is considered consecrated ground, but the faithful dog has been honoured with a statue that has become one of the city's most visited attractions. The city of Edinburgh had to close off part of the kirkyard, the Covenanters' prison, due to an onslaught of peculiar attacks in the early 2000s. In 17th century Scotland, an intense religious struggle led to thousands of Covenanters being persecuted for their beliefs, many of whom were brought to Greyfriars Kirkyard as prisoners. They were kept in squalid conditions and given little food to eat. A total of 18,000 Covenanters were killed across Scotland,
many of whom were put to death by George Mackenzie, the King's Advocate. Mackenzie was a vicious persecutor of the Covenanters and earned himself the nickname Bloody Mackenzie. After his death in 1691, his body was buried in Greyfriars, in the very same cemetery where he had committed his atrocious crimes. In 1999, a homeless man seeking shelter broke into Mackenzie's tomb and disturbed the body, desecrating the coffin and falling into a pit of unidentified skeletons. According to some reports, the man was driven mad with terror and shrieked that the ghost of Bloody Mackenzie had returned. Soon after, visitors and staff began reporting a number of strange occurrences on the grounds, including intense sensations of cold and nausea, breathing noises, and sickening smells. The city of Edinburgh quietly closed the doors of the Covenanters' prison, citing drug activity and break-ins, but local superstition attributed it to Mackenzie's poltergeist. A tour company in Edinburgh decided to capitalise on these superstitions and made a deal with the local council to allow private tours to be held within the Covenanters' prison. Several reports were made by tour guides and visitors of paranormal experiences, with many people reporting that they would leave the tour covered in unexplained bruises and scratches. In late 1999, Colin Grant, a minister of a spiritualist church, was invited by the tour company to investigate. A chilling dark figure was captured on camera behind Grant as he performed an exorcism, and a few weeks later, Grant unexpectedly died. The exorcism was unsuccessful, and reports of ghost activity continue to this day. It appears Bloody Mackenzie is a man as evil in death as he was in life. Sam Heslop disappearance. A British flight attendant called Sam Heslop disappeared on the 7th of March 2021. Since then, police still have no idea what has happened to her or where she is. The former flight attendant was on the sea sailing with her 41-year-old boyfriend, Ryan Bain. The pair were out in the Caribbean when she went missing at the start of March. Since then, police have been trying to find her, though Ryan Bain has suggested she fell overboard and drowned. Ms. Heslop's friends and family have demanded a thorough search of Bain's yacht, Siren Song, but Mr. Bain has refused the search of his yacht despite the fact it was the last place where Ms. Heslop was seen alive. Currently, the Siren Song is moored in the US Virgin Islands, and the Virgin Islands police spokesperson Toby DeRima has stated that a warrant is required to search the yacht. They cannot search without a court-sanctioned warrant, and admits they hoped Mr. Bain would simply allow them, but did not. Ryan Bain has remarked how distraught he is over his girlfriend's absence, but he only reported her as missing over 10 hours from the moment she disappeared. Her family and friends are deeply suspicious of his behaviour. A lawyer has been contacted by Mr. Bain, and when questioned about why he refuses to allow the police to search the premises of the yacht, he has argued that he exercised his constitutional rights to remain silent. According to Mr. Bain, he woke up at 2:30 in the morning by the catamaran's anchor alarm, and that was when he first realised his girlfriend was gone. They matched on Tinder the prior year in July and have been together for a total of 8 months. On the night of her disappearance, witnesses have revealed that the couple went out for a dinner at a restaurant and left at 10 p.m, only for a scream to be heard at around 2 in the morning, the time she allegedly went missing. Much to Heslop's family's dismay, the police discarded the reports of a scream, claiming that there are always noises and it could have been from any one of the vessels in the harbour. Corey Stevenson, Bain's ex-wife, has accused him of domestic violence against his significant others. Sam is 5'8", athletic, brown-haired and Caucasian. The Coast Guard and Virgin Islands police are on the lookout for her or her body and hope to find some traces of her soon, but her parents have stated that Heslop is a seasoned traveller and thus would have known to avoid mistakes which would result with her falling overboard. Sam Heslop worked in Spain when she was in her late 30s, and she has the soul of an adventurer, according to her dearest friends. When she and Ryan Bain met, they were allegedly smitten with each other and did everything together, deciding to take their vacation to experience adventuring together side by side. Heslop's family and friends are desperately worried for her, but with each passing day, the likeliness of her being found alive dwindles. The world is abundant with horrors great and small,
there are mysteries that are fated to forever remain unsolved, never concluded, always merely speculated upon. Dave Box and the Furnace. A small farming town in Fernald, Ohio, happens to be the location of one of the strangest mysteries. For years, the town's main employer was the Feed Materials Production Center, also known as NLO Unknown. The public had been unaware that the Department of Energy had owned NLO. It was one of the only plants in the US that had secretly possessed uranium for nuclear weapons from the 1950s to the 1980s. Many employees, including Harry Easterling, believed they were working in a safe environment. However, the secretive company faced a major scandal in 1984 when a factory accident caused massive amounts of radioactive smoke to be released into the atmosphere. The accident led to an investigation that revealed that NLO had released more than 200 tons of radioactive dust into the air and water sources in the local area. According to reporter DC Cole, "We had an environmental disaster. I think if you did a survey around the Fernald community now, you would find very few people who trust the government." Perhaps the most mysterious aspect of this story was the loss of life of plant employee Dave Box, whose family believes he was murdered because he was about to reveal the truth about the company just a few months before the accident. Dave was a pipefitter at NLO, whose job it was to inspect and maintain the factory's equipment. His co-worker, Harry Easterling, believes Dave knew what the company was up to from conversations they had. On the day of his passing, a witness saw Dave walking towards Plant 4, although he had been assigned to Plant 8. That was the last time anyone saw Dave alive. That morning, a furnace operator assigned to Plant 6 informed his supervisor that there was a mysterious, sticky residue covering the casings in his oven. The supervisor dismissed this and found nothing wrong. It was his co-worker, Harry, who later reported Dave missing. Plant records showed that at approximately 5 a.m., the temperature of the furnace in Plant 6 had dropped by about 28 degrees, suggesting that a foreign object had been dumped in. A worker also found what looked to be a bone on the furnace. After the sheriff's department had been called into the plant, one employee found a set of keys in the waste material that belonged to Dave's car. What was strange about this is his co-worker had seen his keys in Dave's toolbox at around 7 a.m., 2 hours after the foreign object had been dropped into the furnace, yet were then somehow found in the furnace. If this is true, it suggests that someone had taken Dave's life and then threw his keys into the furnace as a cover-up. Investigators concluded that Dave was most likely deceased and suggested that it may have been due to suicide. While Dave had a history of troubled mental health, this explanation does not cover all aspects of the story. His family and multiple former NLO employees believed he was lowered into the furnace and perished because he knew too much. If something other than the official story happened to Dave, it will probably never be revealed unless someone comes forward. Unfortunately, his family will have to live with this mystery until then. Although some disappearances may never be solved, that does not stop people from investigating and trying to piece together what happened. In many cases, the families of those who have disappeared are left with more questions than answers. However, by exploring the evidence and coming up with possible explanations, we can at least hope to get closer to understanding these mysterious events. The disappearance of Robin Graham. With all respect, the disappearance of Robin Graham is quite literally a Hollywood horror story. The 18-year-old disappeared in November 1970 on the Hollywood freeway in Los Angeles. As the investigation unraveled, things began to get really quite spooky. Graham had been out partying that fateful night and had been dropped back to her car by a group of college friends. After setting off home, her car stalled near the Santa Monica off-ramp on the freeway. Police officers on their regular loop stopped and offered to call a tow truck for Graham, but she declined the offer and explained she was going to a phone box to call her parents to come and pick her up. After completing the loop, the officers stopped a second time to check in with Graham, where she explained she'd called her parents. Satisfied, the officers drove on. The officers drove past Graham one final time around 2 a.m. but did not stop this time, as they saw her with a dark-haired man, estimated to be in his late 20s, who they presumed to be the family member that Graham had contacted. The officers also observed Robin seemingly willingly climb into the man's car and drive off. This was the last time that Robin Graham was ever seen. At around 2:30 a.m, Graham's parents arrived at her car to find it locked, empty, and abandoned. Robin Graham was nowhere to be seen, and the patrolling officers who had seen her drive off explained to her parents that, in line with protocol, they had not intervened. Investigators quickly began to link Graham's disappearance to a series of chilling abductions of young women in North California in the few years before the incident. After reading the Los Angeles Times coverage of the disappearance, a woman came forward to the authorities with an eerily similar story to that of Robin Graham. She explained that she had been stranded on the Hollywood freeway earlier that same night when she was approached by a man driving a light blue Corvette who claimed that he was an off-duty policeman and offered her a lift. She refused the offer and was later to identify the stranger that she and possibly Robin had spoken with as a man named Bruce Davis. Davis had a sinister backstory, being heavily linked to the Manson family, a murderous cult responsible for the deaths of 9 people in the 60s and 70s in California. However, the police were more interested in Bruce Davis, suspected of being the deranged Zodiac Killer. The Zodiac Killer haunted North California between 1968 and 1970. In truly sadistic Jack the Ripper style, he would haunt the press with cryptic messages expressing his love for killing humans. The killer was known to strike on the full moon. In a supernatural twist, and like many of the killer's victims, Robin Graham disappeared on a full moon night. Whatever happened to Robin Graham, a very clear message emerges from the events on the 15th of November 1970. Never accept a ride from a stranger. So there we have 3 spine-chilling roadside disappearances. The fact that they occurred on busy highways makes them even more sinister and perhaps more difficult to accept, given their very public location. Roads connect us to our loved ones and lead us to places full of memories. Sadly, for some, memories of their loved ones are all that the victims' families are left with. Disappearance of Timothy Pittson. The saddest disappearances are by far those involving children. In 2011, 6-year-old Timothy Pittson went missing. His father dropped him off at school in Aurora, Illinois. However, only a little while later, his mother, Amy, took him out for a 3-day amusement park trip. Amy Fry Pittson took her own life during this trip, her body found in a motel room in Rockford, Illinois. Her suicide note declared Timothy was allegedly safe with people that would take care of him, but she ensured he would never be seen again. Timothy was born in 2004 and was Amy and James's only child. When Amy took Timothy out of class on that day, she falsified a family emergency and took her 6-year-old son to a zoo and then the Key Lime Cove Resort in Gurnee. Afterwards, they travelled to the Kalahari Resort in Wisconsin on May 13th. It was their last seen place, having been caught on the security footage. Amy Fry Pittson phoned her mother, brother-in-law and other relatives, confirming she and Timothy were okay, but did not answer any of James's calls, who had been attempting to reach his wife in fear of what was happening with her and their son ever since he went to pick Timothy up, and was told she took him before the school day on May 11th ended. Timothy's mother purchased paper, pens and envelopes at the local dollar store in the evening. Either that night or in the morning she overdosed on antihistamines and hurt her wrists. Her body was found on May 14th with no Timothy in sight. The police tragically found a large amount of blood belonging to Timothy inside of Amy's car. Another relative claimed Timothy commonly got nosebleeds, which could explain the traces of blood in the vehicle. James Pittson holds on to the hope and ardent belief his son still lives and is out there, somewhere, and is still searching for him. Unfortunately, in 2019, there was a hoax regarding his reappearance. Residents of Newport, Kentucky contacted the authorities under claims of a teenager walking the streets, having run across the Ohio River Bridge. He was found by the police distraught and upset and claimed himself to be Timothy. However, the Louisville office claimed via Twitter that the boy was not Timothy the following day. Instead, he was 23-year-old Brian Michael Rinney, who was previously a resident of Belmont Correctional Institution in Ohio a month prior after he served 14 months for vandalism and burglary. According to Rinnie's brother, Rinnie has a history of severe mental illness and Asperger's syndrome, as well as bipolar disorder. Sergeant Bill Rowley, spokesman for the Aurora Police, stated, "Although we are disappointed that this turned out to be a hoax, we remain diligent in our search for Timothy, as our missing persons case remains unsolved." Rinnie was given 2 years in prison in 2020 for identity theft involved with pretending to be Pittson. However, to this day, Timothy Pittson has not been found and there is no sign or clue as to where he might be now.
The disappearance of Martin Allen. Martin Allen disappeared a month after his 15th birthday in November 1979 while walking through King's Cross Station on his way home from school. He lived in Kensington with his parents. His father was employed as a chauffeur to an ambassador of the Australian High Commissioner. It was said that there was nothing in Martin's personal life that would indicate his wish to run away, yet he disappeared without a trace. At around 3:50 p.m, Martin said goodbye to a friend at King's Cross Station and boarded the tube on the southbound Piccadilly line, his usual journey. He was intending to stay at his older brother's place in Holloway, but was heading home first to pick up some money. His parents believed he was at his brother Robert's home, while Robert believed he had changed his plans and stayed at home. As a result, his disappearance was not reported until 7 p.m. the next day as his mother served dinner. Around the time of Martin's disappearance, there were multiple reports of a boy matching Martin's description in the presence of a man at Gloucester Road Station. One witness said the boy had been thrown against a wall, another saw him heading down a lift, and another that saw a young boy and a man fitting the same description boarding a train to Rayners Lane, and the boy did not want to leave the train when it arrived at Earl's Court. A description of the man aged between 30 to 40 years old with blonde or light hair was released to the public. Despite numerous witnesses, all leads led nowhere. There have since been rumours Martin was abducted, but one of the main witnesses was found to be a fantasist. No new leads have come to light of Martin Allen's disappearance, and it still remains a mystery. Bill and Dorothy Wacker. Bill and Dorothy lived a seemingly quiet life in a small town, Massillon in Stark County, Ohio, for 48 years, until one day everything changed. They returned home to discover that their home had been turned upside down. Although their belongings were strewn about their house, strangely it seemed that nothing had actually been taken from the house. On this occasion, Bill and Dorothy decided not to contact the authorities, hoping to just forget about the unsettling event. However, the Wackers experienced another break-in the same year, which, understandably, left them shaken. Bizarrely, the house was again ransacked, although, once again, no possessions had actually been stolen from the property. After a third home invasion, the Wackers concluded that it was time to contact the police, who launched a full investigation. No suspect was ever identified. After 6 months of peace, things took an even stranger turn. Dorothy was at home recovering from heart surgery when a young man knocked on her door. Dorothy described the young man as having blonde hair and looking relatively clean-cut and unassuming. He stated that his car had broken down and asked if he could use their phone. Dorothy led him into the house, and it was then that she was violently struck over the head from behind. After regaining consciousness, she was stunned to find that she had been gagged and tied up in her own kitchen. Despite the vicious attack, Dorothy was not badly hurt and was able to give a detailed description to the police, who, once again, were unable to track down the suspect. Unlike the previous break-ins, it was discovered that this time goods had been stolen from the house. However, the stolen goods were not necessarily high-value items, but were apparently of a random, eclectic nature. Items taken included a .22 caliber revolver, an antique watch, a video camera, and a radio scanner. Also, the strange message, "Cheaper but will do," was found scrawled on the wall with a child's crayon. It was after this violent event that the unseen stalker's harassment escalated. The Wackers found that even after changing their phone number several times, they were still subjected to odd, threatening and mocking phone calls at all times of the day and night from unknown numbers. It seemed clear that the perpetrator had the aim of causing significant psychological distress to the elderly couple. Bizarrely, the items that had been taken from the house began to be dumped at the front door in plastic bags, wiped clean of fingerprints or any evidence that would point to a suspect. The couple then began to experience banging on their door and the outside walls of their property, coupled with strange notes left at the front door. In 1993, a further attack at the couple's home left Dorothy with concussion and a cracked skull. The severity of this incident meant that the Wackers were driven to employ the help of friends and family who patrolled the property on the lookout for the intruder. However, on one occasion it seemed that the perpetrator was able to sneak past the Wackers' family and friends in order to leave another sinister note by the back door. The harassment continued unabated until Bill Wacker's death in 1999. To this day, no one has been identified as the likely perpetrator. Who could possibly have been behind the harassment? The couple had no known enemies. Throughout the years, many theories have been put forward, with some implying that a family member, perhaps even Bill himself, may have been responsible for the strange goings-on. With so much time having passed since the events took place, it is unlikely that the mystery will ever be solved.
Laureen Rahn. In April of 1980, Laureen Ann Rahn mysteriously disappeared from her New Hampshire home in Manchester. The girl was a teenager at the time she went missing. On the night she vanished, she was with two friends at her mother's apartment. Judith, her mother, was on a date. Laureen's male friend heard voices down the hallway and assumed Judith was coming home, so he left. But her female friend remained at the apartment. When Judith returned home after 1 a.m., she found something extremely strange. All the hallway's light bulbs were unscrewed, and their apartment was unlocked. When she checked on her daughter, she saw a figure in her bed, sleeping. Naturally, she assumed this was Laureen. But it was her friend asleep in her bed. The friend claimed Laureen slept on the couch, but she was not in the apartment. There was no sign of a struggle, and Laureen's belongings were untouched. No relatives knew where she was, and the police found no sign of her after she was reported missing. For months afterwards, Judith's phone was called by an unknown ID. The locations were typically motels in California, and the caller never spoke. Missing child investigator Carol Jensen discovered one of the motels was used for making child exploitations, but they never found proof to suggest Laureen was ever at these locations. Judith kept getting these strange calls for years until she changed her number. Laureen's parents divorced when she was a baby, and Judith was her main caretaker. She went to Parkside Junior High School and was seen by peers as a happy and outgoing student with good grades who had a great relationship with her mother. Laureen wanted to get into acting, but she was allegedly involved with a bad crowd, with whom she drank alcohol and smoked substances with. Rumours from her school say she planned on running away. Diane Pinault, Laureen's aunt, stated she was an angel who hung around with the wrong people for a while. It was initially thought she ran away, but after several weeks the police believed she momentarily left the apartment during which something happened to her. 6 weeks after Laureen, Denise Daniault vanished 2 blocks down. Authorities linked Daniault's case with criminal Terry Rasmussen, who confessed to taking the life of his wife in 2003, but he passed away in prison in 2010. It's thought he took the lives of up to 6 girls. Judith remarried in the later 1980s, after which she moved to Florida. She believes her daughter was the one who called her from the California motels. Laureen's male friend took his life in 1985, but he was never thought to be a suspect. The investigators think foul play was involved, but have no evidence to back it. These cases are still unsolved, but the hope for their eventual conclusion remains.
The disappearance of Tanash Chitambo. A brother and sister from Bulawayo, Zimbabwe, visited Victoria Falls when the 25-year-old brother went missing. On March 25, 2012, Tanash Chitambo was touring the national park with his sister Mitchell. In the morning, they explored the rainforest near the Zambezi River, spending a few hours on tour. They then broke for lunch and visited the Shearwater restaurant near the entrance to the park. After their lunch, Tanash decided to head back for a solo tour of the falls, but he never returned. His sister grew worried at his absence and by 2 p.m. chose to notify the local rangers. The rangers immediately jumped into action and set up a search of the forest for him. The national park covers an expanse of 23 square kilometers, and they had no real idea of where he went. Around the same time as the search began, a witness came to the park entrance and told the rangers he had seen a man loitering around the falls and seemed a bit suspicious. It is unclear whether that man was Tanash or not, and the lead eventually went nowhere. The Parks and Wildlife Management Authority set up a broad search of the park with many volunteers, but failed to find any clue of his whereabouts. After a week, they ultimately suspended it and sent the search and rescue teams home. They continued the investigation and conducted searches on smaller levels, but had no leads to follow. The waterfalls, river, and dense forest conditions make it extremely difficult, especially after a rainy season. Unfortunately, at least one person passes away at Victoria Falls every year, with many more sustaining injuries. They stand too close to the edge and slip on wet rocks or sit in the water and get swept away by strong surges. The management and investigators claimed they would proceed with the case, but 9 years later, his family still has no answer. The authorities never found a body and believed that it might be a case of the man taking his own life. His sister and parents vehemently deny that this was the case, but too much time has passed to ever know for sure. Ibrahim Puldar. Ibrahim Puldar was a 59-year-old man who went missing from the Los Angeles, California region on July 28, 2016. This date was the last time that anyone reported having seen him, although it was not until his disappearance was reported by his brother on August 6th that he was officially considered to be a missing person. On August 11th, almost 2 weeks after Puldar was last seen, the grey Honda Civic, which he had been borrowing from a friend at the time, was found in Carlsbad, California, which is adjacent to the San Diego area. Police records indicated that the car had been there since at least the 30th of July, and this was the only clue that investigators had as to the disappearance of Puldar, although it raised more questions than it answered. For starters, Carlsbad is an almost 2-hour drive from Los Angeles, where Puldar lived and was last seen. Friends and family were unable to come up with a reason why Puldar would drive to the region, making the appearance of his car even more mysterious. A week after the discovery of the car, Puldar's wallet, keys, and pants were found near the region that the car was discovered, stashed in some bush near the Buena Vista Lagoon. Although there was a chance that someone had stolen the car, driven it to Carlsbad, and then abandoned it, the fact that Puldar's belongings were also in the region seemed to point to the probability that he also had been in the region at some point. However, authorities had no idea whether the abandoned clothes indicated that he had arrived in Carlsbad of his own volition or had been kidnapped. His family claimed that he had no known medical conditions that might result in such an abrupt departure, but that he did like to drink alcohol and partake in gambling. Despite this, authorities were unable to ascertain whether he had outstanding gambling debts or other related issues that might have brought him to the region, or whether these facts even had any bearing on the case at all. The region was thoroughly searched by tracking dogs experienced in both search and recovery, as well as the discovery of human remains, but nothing was ever found. Due to the strangeness of the disappearance and the resulting discoveries, Ibrahim Puldar is considered by authorities to be missing under suspicious circumstances and endangered, although many people have presumed that based off the discovery of his clothes and wallet that he was kidnapped, harmed himself, or met an untimely demise. Ibrahim Puldar has not been seen or heard from in over 6 years. Fariba Amani disappeared while on a cruise with her boyfriend. The last thing you would expect while on a beautiful tropical cruise between the Bahamas and Florida is to disappear without a trace. However, that is exactly what happened to beautician Fariba Amani while on a cruise with her loving boyfriend. Her disappearance was reported by none other than her boyfriend, Ramiz Golshani, whom she apparently had a tumultuous relationship with. Naturally, suspicion was cast onto him as prime suspect.
Even Amani's sister said that Amani was thinking about breaking up with Gulshani before the trip occurred. Gulshani had a different story. The night before he reported her disappearance, he left for the casino at about 1 a.m, while Amani went straight to the gift shop. As soon as he arose in the morning, he claimed that she was nowhere to be found. Even though authorities never labelled him as a suspect, Amani's family did not put his story behind him. Saying that she was never drunk, they firmly believed that her disappearance was not accidental. Gulshani had never tried to contact them either, which further affirmed their doubts. He claimed that he was very tired, exhausted enough to even refuse an interview with the Vancouver Sun. However, he reiterated that he wanted Amani safe and sound back home. If she did not return, she was leaving 2 kids behind. After a search was conducted of the cruise ship that carried more than 1,100 passengers, there was no trace of Amani at all. Even the ocean waters near the Bahamas and Florida produced no results once the Coast Guard finished trawling the area. In the end, only a burning question remains. Was this a murder at the hands of her boyfriend, or was it simply an accident? It's a mystery that just might remain unexplained forever. The disappearance of Dorothy Forstein. The disappearing housewife seems to be a story that always invokes a lot of intrigue and emotion. A seemingly normal woman vanishing out of thin air is always unsettling. The case of Dorothy Forstein is no different. Dorothy was a respected woman in her neighbourhood, a devoted mother of 3, and the wife of a prominent man. Despite her idyllic life, on January 25, 1945, her fate took a dark turn. She was brutally attacked at the front steps of her own home and left with a concussion, broken jaw, broken nose, and other injuries. She was left terrified from the incident, and her husband, Jules, rarely left her home alone for the next 4 years. Sadly, the attack was not the worst thing to happen to her and her family, as on October 18, 1949, she was taken from her home in the middle of the night, the kidnapping having been witnessed by her young daughter Marcy. There were few clues in this case and many questions. First, there were no fingerprints or other evidence left behind by the person. The police also wondered how the person had entered the house because the door was still locked from the inside. 7 years after her disappearance, Dorothy was declared officially deceased. To this day, more than 70 years after her disappearance, no one knows what truly happened to her. Unfortunately, there are more questions than answers in this case, and it looks like it's going to stay that way. Mysteries, like the ones mentioned, make us question what we know to be true. They can ignite debates or even arguments, as everyone will always have their own opinion. But what do you make of these mysteries and disappearances? Be sure to let us know your thoughts in the comment section below and help us by growing this community while working to solve these unexplained mysteries. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.